Welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us. This is the Paul Harrell program. We got a great show for you lined up. Today is April 15th. Of course, this is tax day. This is a day to reflect. It's always a good day to reflect. What kind of government do we have? What kind of government are we actually funding? And the truth of the matter is, we're still funding a government that is a very corrupt government with zero accountability for the most part, although we do have some good news on that front when it comes to some of these Proud Boys and what the Trump Justice Department did by basically asking the court to vacate the previous sentencing. We're going to cover that story as well, but we're going to start with tax day and how it feels to pay into a system that in many cases doesn't represent you. We have Republicans defecting today on legislation that would essentially allow President Trump to deport Haitian immigrants, the same type of Haitian immigrants that, one guy just took a hammer to a mom at a gas station, and we saw that video last week. But we're going to also kind of dive into the specifics of who actually funds our government. Do you remember last year you had the head of state, the president of El Salvador, going to CPAC, and he dropped a pretty significant truth nugget. He said that we all pay taxes to keep the illusion going that it's actually you and I that fund the government. But we don't actually fund the government because they have the printing press and can just create and destroy money at will. All this talk about trying to avoid a central bank digital currency, which we should. In many ways, we already have the digital dollar, and they create, again, and destroy money as they see fit. So then the other question would be, then why are we still paying taxes? Well, because it's also a form of psychological oppression, as well as, practically a lot of us are a lot poorer when you have to pay in. And then we're going to talk about refunds as well. So we're going to have a great show today. I'm flying solo again. You'll have to forgive me. It's not my fault. But no, we wish best for Rob Spencer and Eric while they are busy earning a living. The Paul Harrell program starts right now.
The Paul Harrell program.
All right, as always, we are broadcasting live right now on LFA TV from the great state of Arkansas, my home. Also on the Paul Harrell program YouTube channel, as well as Facebook, as well as over on X and X American News. Really do appreciate everybody out there, wherever you're watching. We would ask that you like, share, subscribe to this video. If it's YouTube, click the little bell to receive notifications. If you're on Rumble, make sure to like or make sure to subscribe to the LFA TV channel on Rumble. We would very, very much appreciate it. So let's get into it. It is tax day. I filed my taxes today in the nick of time. Today is the deadline. Many people are filing extensions, as is allowed. They want to maybe take care of this when it gets closer to October. You do hear the headlines from the Trump administration. I know Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent was out there today, and we have that clip for you where he says, people are getting record returns, and I don't dispute that at all. The whole concept of a tax return, though, isn't it a little interesting if you think about it? They take the money, and then they give it back to you, and all of us are grateful. Now, this is not just specific to the Trump administration. I mean, this is the status quo with all of the presidents. I mean, ever since the income tax became as oppressive as it is, and this is the business of the federal government. That's the status quo. It is the business of the federal government to know how much money you make every year. A concept to our founders that would be so foreign and so tyrannical if they were alive today, and I'm quite confident of that because. In the past, if the federal government needed money, they just put it on the states, and they left it up to the states with how they were going to collect it. And then the states would transmit the money to the Fed as they needed it, or to the federal government, not the Federal Reserve. Obviously, that didn't exist until 1913. So the whole concept of getting your tax return and getting a little bit of money left, the government apparently took too much, and then, of course, you have your your child tax credits and things like that, which is also another interesting rabbit hole to dive into. I got to be honest, I'm just kind of over it, right? I mean, you look at everything that we have to put up with as Americans, people that actually live here, and we are taxed too much. We are overtaxed. And not only are we overtaxed, we are funding a government that habitually refuses to do what we want it to do. Even if we somehow miraculously win elections, we still have this giant apparatus that exists to thwart the will of the people, that exists to make sure the change that we vote for never happens. In some cases, they run really clever psyops where they tell us that it is happening, but the complete opposite actually happens. And so it's April 15th. It's a great day to reflect on what kind of government we actually have versus what kind of government we're supposed to have. I'm going to start with this flashback because this was a pretty interesting truth nugget that took place last year at CPAC. This tweet is from October 25th of 2025 by Concerned Citizen. And it is it's a video of, again, the president of El Salvador, Bukele, talking to, I believe it was a CPAC audience, about who really funds the American government.
They always tell me that the problem is high taxes, but they're wrong. Of course, high taxes are extremely high here in the United States. I give you that. The real problem is not the high taxes themselves, but the fact that they are not even really funding the government. Not even those high taxes, higher than a lot of places in the world, not even those taxes are really funding the government. So who's financing the government? Government is financed by treasury bonds. And who buys the treasury bonds? Mostly the Fed. And how does the Fed buy them? By printing money. But what backing does the Fed have for that money being printed? The treasury bonds themselves. So basically, you finance the government by printing money out of thin air. Well, so if the government can print the limited amounts of money out of thin air, why do they collect taxes? The answer is simple, but it's very shocking. The real problem is that you pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. It's shocking, but it's true.
Only to uphold the illusion that you fund the government. It is shocking because it's more than that, because it's not just the illusion that you're funding the government, if what he's saying is true, which I believe it is. It's really to uphold a much grander illusion. A much grander illusion. And fundamentally, that illusion is that we are free when we're really not. Because the whole thing about, taxes, and I mean, we just had a huge battle last year about the tax code, right? With the big, beautiful bill and everything else. And yeah, it's good to lower taxes. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that it's not a good thing to lower taxes. The IRS should be abolished. There should be no income tax at all. It should all be consumption-based. That would be a great place to start the debate. But the grander illusion that would also be that we have a choice in any of this. And yes, in some instances, we do. But I can't really go down this rabbit hole without also thinking of the electronic voting machine mail-in voting, fraud as well. That benefits both parties, I believe. And this is one of the reasons why Congress is failing us again with not getting the SAVE Act passed. We need to address the electronic voting machines as well. But, I mean, a bare minimum voter ID, getting rid of the mail-in ballots. But they're not going to move on that either. And the reason is because having honest elections would make it easier to shatter this grand illusion and to actually get real change in Washington, D.C. Bukele went on last year.
The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper, a bubble.
money printing, paper backed with paper, a bubble. What was it Elon Musk? What was it Elon Musk said? Whose hundreds of millions of dollars only bought him 5 months in this administration. Elon Musk talked about the magic money machines that could create money and deposit it in any bank account in the world. And that he found them. He found what he calls magic money machines. And yet, when you went, whether you were going to get a refund or not, when you went to TurboTax or e-file or wherever you went to try to file your taxes or your CPA, we're all participating in this system that is fake, according to Bukele. He's saying that this monstrosity, this fear of Big Brother and the government, everybody, where you've got to tell the government how much you make. They don't send you a bill. In my local county, and I'm sure in yours as well, or your local city, if you owe taxes, you're going to pay that tax in the form of a fee for service. Let's say you need to go renew your tags. Okay, that'll be $25 or $30 or whatever your license renewal or tag renewal is. If you owe property taxes or your city taxes, those things get assessed to you. You literally get a bill in the mail saying, hey, you owe this much money because you assessed your property. You have a vehicle, you have 2 vehicles or whatever, or if you own your home outright and don't have a mortgage. There's all these things, but you get a bill in the mail from the city saying, pay us this much. This is how much you owe. We're not responsible to go to the city and try to report how much we made and all of this nonsense. It is one of the most, if you think about it from a true 18th century American Revolution standpoint, April 15th and the IRS and everything that's involved in it is the most offensive thing to the American spirit. And we don't think of it that way anymore because now we have been conditioned to run to the IRS so that we get a little money back from them that they shouldn't have taken from us in the first place. Or we get these child tax credits, or you get an earned income tax credit, or you get, to write off your, some people create farms. They get the farm tax credit because they make too much money, and so they start a farm on their property, to try to find all of these different loopholes, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with loopholes. That's actually a leftist tactic. Oh, these loopholes. Well, actually, that's in the code. It was put in the code by the elites to take advantage of. I mean, it's literally legal. Their legal process is to pay the least amount of tax that you possibly can. It's also, at this point, ridiculous. Like when you get to the charitable, unless you're a billionaire or a multimillionaire, you get to the charitable contributions like that we individuals made. Well, now, your combined, if you file jointly, your combined standard deductions is like what, over $24,000 or something like that, $12,000 a piece, or like that's what it used to be. Is the average American giving $24,000 a year to charity? Most of us are not doing that. So now the whole idea of keeping up with your, that whole thing, don't get me wrong, it's great to have standard deductions that are that high, but do you understand how just strange and convoluted and unnecessary all of this is? All because Uncle Sam demands to know how much you make and how you made your money when it is none of their business from a natural rights, human, rights that come from God from that standpoint. What we have allowed this to become is absolutely un-American. It is an un-American idea. And when I say American, I'm talking about America as it was founded. More from Bukele.
They will inevitably burst. The situation is even worse than it seems, because if most Americans and the rest of the world were to become aware of this farce, confidence in your currency would be lost, the dollar would fall, and the Western civilization with it. If the next president of the United States doesn't make the necessary policies and structural changes, sooner or later that bubble will burst. There's still time. You don't have to make the same mistakes we did in the 60s and the 70s. You can still jump before the water boils. Winning the election isn't enough to solve these problems. They will not simply go away as a consequence of an electoral result. It will take a total re-engineering of the government top to bottom. It will...
A total re-engineering of the government top to bottom. Now, I believe this probably happened in 2024. The post that I got was from 2025. But, I mean, it's a very viral clip of Bukele telling the American people the truth. And it's interesting, he's obviously not American. He's the president of El Salvador. But it also kind of gives you a glimpse into what these other, he's a foreign head of state. And so you got to wonder, what are the other foreign heads of state? What do they think? And they probably think about like he does. And a total rearranging of the federal government. Well, this time last year, that's exactly what President Trump was talking about. This time last year, we were inundated with talk about tariffs. Now, I know the Supreme Court did what they did, and Donald Trump has other measures to continue the tariffs. That's what we were. Good luck getting Congress to codify it, though. Donald Trump was talking about ending the Internal Revenue Service. Not just Trump, but also Howard Lutnick. Obviously, that was before the Epstein news hit about him. Also, Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent. They were talking about abolishing the IRS and changing its name to the External Revenue Service, where we were focused on getting tariffs from other countries who want to do business here in this market, and that would fund the government. Which, if President Trump could do that, it would literally be the greatest transfer of power back to the citizenry since the American Revolution. It would be a George Washington-type move to liberate the people from this tyranny and fear. And there is fear there. This April 15th is, and we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the founding of this country. And we've still got a lot of work to do. I know I keep saying that, but I'm going to continue to say it. Matter of fact, J.D. Vance said the other day, he was at a Turning Point event. We've got that audio for you. If you're dissatisfied where things are, you've got to keep. You can't disengage. You can't get discouraged. He was specifically talking about how there are people on the right who are upset with America's involvement in Middle East policy right now. And he said, don't be silent. Well, so we're not going to be silent. We're going to call balls and strikes. We're going to celebrate when we think something good has happened. And we're going to call out when we need to go further. And when I thought about filing taxes this year, and I'm sure you did too, and, people, I got to get a refund. But you think about it, we're doing all of this with this expectation of we have to check in with Mother Government. We got to check in with Uncle Sam. And if we don't, we're going to go to jail. Or we're going to get fined, into oblivion. Isn't it crazy to think about that there was, for the first 100 years of America's existence, or over 100 years, we didn't have to worry about reporting our income to the federal government? Do you understand how insane that is? And yet, we just blindly accept it. Not to mention the fact, like if you wanted to kind of just completely disregard everything Bukele said, and let's just assume that our tax dollars actually do fund our government, which I don't believe they do, because it's all a farce. But let's assume that they do fund the government. What kind of government are we funding? We're funding money. One example, we're funding a government that creates a slush fund to pay off the victims of sexual assault when it comes to members of Congress who are cheating on their spouses or, in many cases, are secretly gay. Our tax dollars are going to pay off the victims of sexual assault, or at least alleged sexual assault. That's one of the things our dollars do. Our tax dollars do. Our tax dollars are being used to ensure that the powerful stay in power, even though our tax dollars are being used to ensure, in many cases, a two-tiered justice system, although we do have some good news on that today, again, with the Proud Boys. There are glimmers of light in this situation, but now's the time to push, to put on the gas. I mean, now's the time, pedal to the metal. And a lot of this isn't going to happen, honestly, until this situation, this war in the Middle East is ended, and we have an update for you on that as well. But more on the tax situation. Maybe this will get people's attention. Speaking of the Middle East. Breaking news. The Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, is only weeks away from developing nuclear weapons. Maybe that would get somebody's attention. Well, the IRS is an existential threat. We better get rid of them. We better blockade the IRS so they don't get any more funds and they can't send any auditors out to your business. Greg on X writing, IRS, you owe us taxes. Me, how much do I owe? How much do I owe? IRS, well, you get to figure that one out. Me, well, can I just pay what I want? No. We know exactly how much you owe, but you have to guess the number too. Me, well, what if I guess wrong? IRS, jail. Happy tax day. It's a ridiculous system. And the only reason it exists is to remind us that we're not free in this regard, in this specific regard. You can't make money in this country without the government knowing and you reporting it to the government. And signing a document under penalty of perjury, by the way, that's when you have to sign your tax returns because you're signing a court document saying that if you messed up, you've now perjured yourself. This is how they get people. What if I'm wrong? Jail. Happy tax day. It's just insane. You owe us taxes. Now, here's a clip of President Trump. I believe this was from last year, talking about basically this economic revolution. I mean, getting rid of the IRS, relying on tariffs would be like a huge economic revolution.
There is a chance that the money from tariffs could be so great that it would replace, in the old days, about 1870 to 1913, the tariffs were the only form of money. And that's when our nation was relatively the richest. We were the richest. There is a chance that the money...
So there's a chance. Howard Lutnick, again, this was him on Jesse Waters last year. This is February. Last year, he was going even further.
Think about it. Donald Trump announces the External Revenue Service, and his goal is very simple. His goal is to abolish the Internal Revenue Service and let all the outsiders pay. I mean, this is someone who is focused on America. Let's drive down our waste, fraud, and abuse. I'll give you an example. Cruise ships. You ever see a cruise ship with an American flag on the back? They have flags of like Liberia or Panama. None of them pay taxes. None of them pay taxes. Every super tanker, none pays taxes. Alcohol, all foreign alcohol, no taxes. This is going to end under Donald Trump, and those taxes are going to be paid, and Americans' tax rates are going to come down. That's what Donald Trump wants to do.
Now, the tax rates have come down, but again, and I get it, you can take more than one bite at the apple, assuming that you have a Congress that's not going to be controlled by Democrats this time next year. This is what we were talking about a year ago, over a year ago. We were in the midst of it. It was a crazy time in terms of rhetoric, and now you've got infighting on the right. And we are tied up in the Middle East. Now, we can talk about that just for a second. Maybe we're about to not be. It seems like every day the war is over. Maybe not. The war's almost over. Okay. Maria Bartiromo sat down with President Trump, and as I got off the air yesterday, one of the last clips I saw was her recording a video right after she had finished speaking with President Trump, and she said the war's over. Watch the video. And then I went and watched the clip, and he said, well, it's almost over. So, but you do have Polymarket now saying that there's going to be a deal soon. Here's Zero Hedge's take on it. Headline, Iran halts all petrochemical exports while officials signals compromise straight passage opening as negotiators cite progress. This was posted at 1:15 Central, so about 3.5 hours ago. The summary says the Iran war is very close to over, with authorities in Tehran eager to agree to a peace deal, Trump says, adding, "We've been beating them militarily." Axios cites progress towards a framework to end the war. Iran state media says halt to all petrochemical exports. RTRS cites possible compromise on Strait Passage. The Associated Press and Bloomberg are reporting the two sides have an in-principle agreement to pursue further diplomacy. However, this is batted down as unconfirmed by Tehran and a U.S. official. The Pentagon is sending thousands of additional troops into the Middle East in the coming days. Washington Post. I pray we don't have ground troops. Trump claims China very happy. The U.S. is permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. Also, Xi told him Beijing was not sending weapons and defense items to Tehran. Also significant Lebanon fighting continues. Israel issues more evacuation orders moving into south. Tehran outraged, threatens Red Sea shipping. Unconfirmed reports of 1 week Lebanon ceasefire about to take effect. Continue to pray for the Christians in the Middle East, by the way, because the mainstream media is not going to tell you about them. They're not going to tell you that Lebanon is a 30% Christian country. They're not going to tell you about the destruction that happened in Beirut. Also, the Christians in Iran. 2 million some Christians in Iran during all of this. Please pray for them. Pray for them to continue to have boldness, the type of boldness that you see in the New Testament when the disciples were told to shut up about Christ. Pray for boldness and pray for conversions and pray for their safety. Just pray for the safety of Christians in Iran. Pray for the safety of Christians in Lebanon. Pray for the Christians all across the Middle East when they come to mind, because they live in a context that you and I cannot possibly comprehend. And that's what I'm most concerned about with all of this. Well, I'm most concerned about my own country and the people here, but I am very concerned about the Christians in the Middle East. So that's an update. You see this on Polymarket, U.S. and Iran permanent peace deal by April 30th. So they're saying there's right now the bets are 36% chance that in 15 days this war will be over. And again, I want to get back to Doge. Hey, we saved so much that everybody's getting a $5,000 check. Now, I get, the free market people, oh, well. But do you understand, like, we were talking about real populist things a year ago today. We were talking about ending the IRS a year ago today. And we're not talking about that anymore. And we're talking about war in the Middle East. So it's just an interesting perspective. Now, here is Scott Bessent earlier today on this tax day. Scott Bessent attempting to take a victory lap because of the record tax refunds that Americans are receiving versus what they received under the Biden administration.
I'm here to tell you that it has been a fantastic tax season. It has gone smoothly. It has gone efficiently from the point of view of the IRS, but most importantly, it's been a great tax season for the American people. Thanks to promises made, promises kept, through the working families tax cuts, the president has delivered the record refunds to the American people. More than 45% of the filers of the returns that we have seen have had at least one of the 4 president's signature policies. No tax and tips, no tax and overtime, the deductions for our great seniors, and the deductibility of interest on auto loans for American-made cars. And I will tell you that one of those that Americans have taken is no tax and overtime. And it's the American way. If you want to work longer hours, you get to keep more of your money. And with that, we are seeing, I want to encourage everyone out there watching today to change their withholding, if they haven't already done so, because if you change your withholding, then you will get an automatic real wage increase, be on a weekly or a monthly basis, and you will be able to keep more of your money this calendar year.
So, some people in the chat saying they're not buying it. Let me just tell you how this should have gone, right? It should not have gone, well, we've had a great tax season and the IRS is very pleased and da-da-da-da. It should have gone like this. This administration recognizes that no American enjoys paying taxes. We want to eliminate your tax burden, and we are still working on eliminating the IRS in its entirety. The situation right now is we haven't been able to make that a reality. But in the meantime, the refunds are record highs. And the reason they're record highs is because of the work we did to get your tax rate down. And if you want to pay less this year and take home more, you can actually change your withholdings. Again, we understand that this is your money. It's not our money. And we understand that the laws exist right now that essentially reverse that. And, the claim is that money belongs to us first before it belongs to you. And that's not true. And we're going to continue working to change that this season. I hope everybody does enjoy the extra money that they got in their pockets. And we'll call your legislators, we'll call your congressmen and your senators and demand that we do more and demand that we eliminate the income tax in its entirety. That, ladies and gentlemen, instead of this victory lap on the day when we all just had to check in with mama government to let them know, to me, that would be a much better message. I mean, I don't even see how you could disagree with that. Matter of fact, if Scott Bessent were sitting right there where Rob usually sits, he would probably agree with me. Instead of this, well, boys and girls, we had a fantastic tax season. Yeah. No thanks. No thanks. But, you really can't have this conversation we were talking about earlier with Bukele, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury bonds, us paying taxes to promote the illusion that we actually fund any of this is insane. And so then it's really a form of psychological feudalism, psychological serfdom. We pay taxes because this is all one giant psyop. And you know who's at the head of this psyop, or at least it's the arguable point, and that's the Federal Reserve and the puppet who runs it named Jerome Powell. They control our economy. We do not have a free market. They control our economy the way we control the thermostats in our homes. These people are real-life James Bond villains. And he does need, the Federal Reserve should be eliminated. This is not just about the IRS. The Treasury Secretary should have also said, abolish the IRS, which he didn't today, but he should have reiterated what we were saying a year ago. But then he should also said, and we should fire Jerome Powell, audit the Fed, and disband the Federal Reserve, which is accountable technically on paper to no one. But here's what President Trump said to Maria Bartiromo about Jerome Powell.
That I would have done for $25 million, that's going to cost maybe $4 billion. Don't you think we have to find out what happened there? We have other jobs like that, like the railroad in California, where it's, 25 times more than it was originally going to cost. And I think they're going to end up abandoning it. Okay, that's Gavin Newsom, or as I call him, Gavin Newsom, who's so bad. But that's the one. But I think the Federal Reserve building is just as bad. And so whether it's incompetence, corruption, or both, I think you have to find out. I really do. I think you have to find out.
So you're not going to drop the probe?
Oh, I'm not playing. I have to find out.
And he said he's not leaving if,
Well, then I'll have to fire him, okay? If he's not leaving on time, I've held back firing him. I've wanted to fire him, but I hate to be controversial, I want to be uncontroversial. But
and you think Kevin Warsh can get confirmed? You think Tom Tillis is going to give you a vote?
Well, we're going to have to find out. He might not, but that's why Tom Tillis is no longer.
Okay, so fire him. I would love for President Trump to fire this guy. Let's find out if he actually can. Let's find out if the President of the United States actually can fire who the financial elite don't believe he has the authority to fire. Let's do that. Let's do that right now. Now, this whole investigation into the Federal Reserve and the misallocation of money, which is obviously true, that's what the Federal Reserve exists to do. Now, we've kind of got them dead to rights on the expansions and the renovations done with the Federal Reserve. And, thankfully, Donald Trump, who is a real estate billionaire and a builder, can look at, this is kind of right up his alley. He can immediately see what's going on here because this is his literal job, was his personal expertise is knowing if the American people are getting screwed on a building project. Okay, so he's got this guy dead to rights, and whoever else is responsible for it, but he's got Jerome Powell dead to rights, and so that's really, really good. But the courts are not wanting to allow. See, that's all you need to know. Does President Trump really have the power to fire Jerome Powell? Well, let's find out. Because the courts don't even want the investigation and the probes and the subpoenas to continue because they're protecting the real boss, our financial overlords, the Federal Reserve. And you're probably, you know what? It's like a domino, or it's like knocking out the bottom of a deck of a house of cards. If you got rid of the Federal Reserve and you, for real, abolished it, the IRS would just crumble. The IRS sits on top of the heap of this foundation that is not owned by the people. It's of this private. Well, we talked with Jeff Younger. It's actually such a weird situation. It's not a public bank, the Federal Reserve, and it's also not private. It's like some sort of. I don't know. The Federal Reserve exists somewhere in the metacosm. I don't know, and that's probably closer to the truth when you think about the spiritual oppression that goes on with so many of these people. But that brings me to Lindsey Graham. So now you know what it's time for, right? It is officially time for. I'm gonna sew all of this together. It's time for Graham Watch, folks.
Senator Lindsey Graham loves New Wars. This segment is called Graham Watch, and it's dedicated to him. We see you, Lady G.
You Lady G. You Lady G.
So Lindsey Graham obviously had a really bad weekend because Mark Lynch is now the sole contender, been endorsed by Paul Dans. We've covered all of that. Lindsey Graham wants to put out this. Lindsey Graham is totally out of touch. Now, I know you know that, but I'm about to give you a specific example of why Lindsey Graham is totally out of touch. He posts this. It's tax day, and thanks to President Donald Trump, families across South Carolina are seeing real relief from the one big, beautiful bill. As Senate Budget Chairman, I was proud to help deliver this win. Working families come first under this administration, and we're just getting started. So he drops this ad.
Remember when overtime didn't always feel like yours? When tips didn't always stay in your pocket? Working families deserved better. That's why Senator Lindsey Graham passed President Trump's working families tax cuts and delivered the largest tax cuts in history. Now, whether it's overtime or tips, you keep what you earn. And in South Carolina, that relief is real. With up to $6,000 more in wages, up to $9,800 more in take-home pay for a family of 4, and 1 million seniors benefiting from no tax on Social Security. It delivered more than $200 million for rural health care in South Carolina, and extended tax deductions for nearly 74,000 South Carolina small businesses. That's money back in your pocket and investments back into your communities. Senator Lindsey Graham and President Trump kept their promise and delivered the largest tax cuts in history because you deserve to keep what you earn.
Okay, there's just one problem with that. None of that applies to South Carolina. How out of touch do you have to be? Mark Lynch immediately calls him out on this. A lot of you don't know this, but Mark Lynch does because he actually lives in South Carolina and wants to represent the citizens of South Carolina. And he says to Lindsey Graham, if you could take the time out of your busy schedule to visit your home state every 2 weeks, you might know that South Carolinians are not seeing the tax relief because our state Senate rejected implementing it. Our senators should be more in tune with what is actually happening in his state and his constituents. So Lindsey Graham tries to take this victory lap, me and Trump, and I did it. We did it. But the people of his state don't actually benefit from it. Now, you can say, well, that's not Lindsey's fault. Yeah, but the fact is he's telling everybody they got all this tax relief in his state, and they didn't. They didn't because South Carolina rejected it. As a matter of fact, this is it right here. South Carolina Senate, this was from March 31st. It was not that long ago. South Carolina Senate rejects plan to use One Big Beautiful Bill Act tax breaks for 1 year. Opponents of the bill said it was too expensive and didn't consider long-term consequences. So he argued it undoes the entire process of the new law signed Monday. The debate put the chamber's leading Republicans at odds, with Senate Finance Chairman Harvey Peeler arguing refusing to conform meant rejecting the tax break. So all of those things like no taxes on your overtime and no taxes on tips. The people of South Carolina actually don't get those this year because of their, in this case, feckless Republicans that don't want to give them tax breaks. So they might get them on the, so this is what's so messed up. This is for a tax day, this is a great conversation. So they would get them on the federal side of things. But then, and I don't know if the tax, I'm assuming the tax software will compensate for this. But if you're a South Carolinian right now, you will deduct the overtime taxes and the tax on tips, and you have to add it back in for your state income tax. Yeah, make that make sense. Make it make sense. In the meantime, Lindsey Graham is really trying to capitalize on Donald Trump's not only endorsement of himself. Again, we are on this program flabbergasted by President Trump endorsing this swamp creature, Lindsey Graham. Literally, we all voted for Trump to drain the swamp. Lindsey Graham is the mascot of the swamp. He is the mascot of mascots of rhinos. Now, we all know this. And you know what? There's going to be an election, and the people are going to decide whether or not Donald Trump's endorsement means anything when it comes to Lindsey Graham. And there's going to be a significant portion of South Carolinians that are going to totally discard President Trump's endorsement of Lindsey Graham, as is their right. But there's also going to be election funny business. As a matter of fact, a good friend of the program, Dr. Andrew Paquette, who exposed the machine voter fraud in Bexar County, Texas, is going to be, I am told, he's going to be looking into, or at least I think, let me say this. I don't know this for sure, but I'm doing everything I can to get Dr. Andrew Paquette to look into and to monitor the situation in South Carolina when the early voting starts, because there's going to be shenanigans, I can promise you that. Just like with Ken Paxton and John Cornyn. And we're going to give you, on this program, I'm going to give you the best coverage there is on this South Carolina primary, specifically with election security. Here's this ad that Lindsey Graham is now putting out on the South Carolina airwaves.
President Trump knows who he can count on to deliver for our country, and Mark Lynch is not it. Trump called Lynch a lunatic and a disaster for the Republican Party. That's why President Trump has given Senator Lindsey Graham his complete and total endorsement. He can count on Lindsey Graham to get the job done. President Trump said it best: vote for Senator Lindsey Graham all the way.
He's a good man, and he loves you, and he loves this state. Thank you, Lindsey.
Of course, I'm not psychic, but I do think that what a good counter to this ad would be Senator Lindsey Graham being booed at a Trump rally in Pickens, South Carolina, Pickens County. The dude was booed off the stage at a Trump rally because the people of South Carolina actually are disgusted with Lindsey Graham. But this is why you endorse, right? I mean, this ad is the reason Lindsey Graham wants. I mean, think about it for a second. What in the world? What else would Lindsey Graham do if he didn't have Donald Trump's endorsement? What else would he do? I mean, yeah, he's going to attack Mark Lynch, and there's already people that are, going to do everything they can to the opposition research, which they had neglected up until now, is going to be, turned up to 11. We know that they're going to do that, but I mean, essentially, if Donald Trump had stayed out of this, Lindsey Graham would have a very, very tough road ahead because his record is abysmal. He's got like a lifetime conservative rating of like 40-something%, right? Which is not just an F, but it's like a long way away from a D. You're 20 points away from a D. So you're like at the lower end of the F. Well, maybe not the lower end of the F because, well, anyway, it doesn't really matter. He'd have nothing is my point. So you're going to see Lindsey Graham touting Donald Trump's endorsement everywhere because it's literally it's like all he has. It's the only thing he has going for him. And all Mark Lynch has to do is say, look, I voted for Trump 3 times. I love Trump. But President Trump on this issue doesn't know what's best for South Carolina. And Lindsey Graham is terrible for South Carolina. Lindsey Graham may be able to ink big government deals in Washington, D.C. and promote every new war and want to invade every country in America. But it wasn't only a few years ago that Donald Trump blamed himself for re-electing Lindsey Graham because he endorsed him 6 years ago. It was only 10 years ago that Donald Trump said that Lindsey Graham is one of the dumbest human beings ever, back when they were running against each other. So Derek Evans did not like Lindsey Graham's post. Derek Evans, former J6er, friend of the show, says, "You are a sorry POS, and nothing Trump says will change that. Mark Lynch is a patriot." This is the way forward, friends. This is the way forward. Mark Lynch responding to that ad to the cowardly U.S. Senator from South Carolina. Why hide behind a TV ad? Come home and face real South Carolinians. Debate me. No curated audiences. No questions off the table. If you can't face the people and answer their questions, you don't deserve to represent them. What do you think a debate between Lindsey Graham and Mark Lynch would look like? How would that go for him? And I think Lindsey Graham would shake to pieces. I really do. I think Lindsey Graham would get flustered very easily. And the only way, Lindsey Graham would desperately want the questions in advance. I could promise you that. He would want the topics controlled. But Mark Lynch calling for an uncurated debate. Let's actually have a debate. Lincoln Douglas style would be great. A long form debate would be great. It'd be great to get them in a podcast format for 2 hours, both of them in the same room with a right-wing Republican radio host. I'm not really sure who that would be, but it'd be interesting to see. So yes, Mark Lynch, one more time on this Graham watch. Lindsey Graham didn't just go along with the swamp. He is one of the major architects of it. In 2011, Graham voted yes to confirm Judge James Boasberg. So this is going to tie all the way back to Jerome Powell on this April 15th, the tax day. Okay, this is why I pulled it, and this is why we had the order that we did. because the news is an art form on a daily basis. In 2011, Graham voted yes to confirm Judge James Boasberg. Now look at what that decision has produced. A federal judge who tried to go after Trump officials for carrying out deportation flights and enforcing our immigration law. A judge who was slapped down by an appeals court for overstepping his authority. A judge who blocked a grand jury investigation into Jerome Powell's $2.5 billion Fed overspend. This is the judiciary Lindsey Graham helped put in power. No accountability, no law and order, no America first. Lindsey Graham has consistently put judges in power who protect the status quo and punish anyone who challenges it. Graham had a choice, and he chose Boasberg. Americans are still living with the consequences. Again, this was Jeanine Pirro talking about how the judge just doesn't want the Federal Reserve or Jerome Powell to be investigated.
Giving an update on the DOJ criminal investigation into Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Let's watch.
Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Now, the American public is fed up with public monies that seem to go into a black hole, especially in D.C., where no one is held accountable. One of the age-old tools that all prosecutors have to investigate any crime, including cost overruns, is a grand jury subpoena. Today, however, in Washington, an activist judge has taken that tool away from us by inserting himself.
Lindsey Graham, Judge Boasberg, the guy's a disaster, okay? He's an absolute disaster. And I think we all know that now. So that concludes, ladies and gentlemen, our Graham Watch.
Senator Lindsey Graham loves new wars. This segment is called Graham Watch.
Graham Watch.
And it's dedicated to him.
Any chance I get.
We'll see you, Lady G.
See you, Lady G. With the bubble wand in the Disney. All right, we're going to reset here. We're going to take a quick break. We got a great rest of the show for you. We've got to talk about the Proud Boys. And we're going to talk about a positive story that Jeanine Pirro, who you just saw there, being involved in getting rid of these ridiculous charges against the Proud Boys and, the sham that was trying to put J6 on them and make them insurrectionists and everything else. Also, we got an update on the pipe bomber story. The Fed's now charging Brian Cole with a superseding indictment, which is very, very odd. And again, I don't believe that this autistic black kid was the pipe bomber. That's where I'm at with it. I'm very, very skeptical of that. But we'll talk about it. I know some people have different opinions. And also J.D. Vance at the Turning Point event, more Trump with Maria Bartiromo, as well as, if we have time, Lauren Boebert on Benny Johnston's show talking about Anthony Weiner's laptop, and also on the same day, comedian Dave Chappelle criticizing Lauren Boebert. I know that all sounds weird. Isn't it weird how all the news fits together like that? Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. This is the Paul Harrell Program, and we're going to be back here in just a moment.
The Paul Harrell Program.
Why is Red Vibe different? What sets it apart? What sets us apart from the standard red light panels? This is a medical grade device, and what that means is the red light bulbs and the near infrared bulbs have very specific wavelengths. If you think about the wavelength as the medicine, the 635, the 670, the 810, the 850, those were specifically chosen because those are the most powerful effectors of the cells. So those specific wavelengths, when they get into our body, when they affect our tissue, they spike energy production, they help with nerve pain control, they increase stem cell counts. There's very specific mechanisms that those specific wavelengths work at, and that's the medicine. So if you think of, say, medicine as an Advil or a specific steroid or a blood pressure medication, the wavelength is the medication. The other part of that, whenever you take a medication, is dose. Right? So you have the medication. So if you take 1 milligram of Advil, and the average dose of an Advil is 200 milligrams to 800 milligrams, it's not going to work. That doesn't mean the medicine's bad. It just means you didn't take enough. Right? And so even if you have the right wavelengths, first you have to have the right medicine, and then you have to have the right dose. And to have the right dose, you have, in light therapy, you have to have enough energy. So you have to have a powerful bulb. The LED bulbs, or light-emitting diodes, have a specific wavelength, and that wavelength is the medicine. And the wavelengths that have been studied and published on that are the most powerful in affecting healing and the changes that we want to see with our bodies and our health are the 635 wavelength, the 670, 810 nanometer wavelength, and 850 nanometer wavelength. Those are all going to affect the mitochondria, the cytochrome C oxidase, and affect those powerful long-term changes and affect that downstream pathways. And that's what you get with Red Vibe devices. The highest efficacy, the best wavelengths, concentrated to help your health.
Behind every precious life, there was a choice. Behind every family moment, behind every special memory, there was a choice. A life of joy, a life that is beautifully and wonderfully made. At 7 Weeks Coffee, we are funding the pro-life movement, one cup at a time. Will you let your coffee serve a greater purpose?
The Paul Harrell Program.
I'm digging the new music as always. Welcome back to the show, folks. I'm here with you on LFA TV as well as the Paul Harrell Program YouTube page, Facebook, as well as over on X. Here for the next hour, going to be talking about a lot of stuff. I'm sorry, this is terrible. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of digging the music here. All right, so real quick, though, I know we were just talking about Mark Lynch in South Carolina. Just a little personal pet peeve of mine, and that is this abortion issue. And the before we get into the Proud Boys story, just real quick, I thought this was really good. I follow a guy over on X. He's a great follow. I would encourage all of you to do so as well. His name is Ben Zeisloft. He's very big in the abolition movement. Abolition is actually, obviously we're talking about abortion and abolishing it, criminalizing it, making it like any other murder, okay, which is illegal. And so he got some good news out of South Carolina. So I was just giving South Carolina a lot of crap, if you will. But members of the South Carolina Senate Medical Affairs Subcommittee have passed Senate Bill 1095, which would ban abortion for women with misdemeanor penalties. So this is a big deal in shifting the Overton window. This is a good first step. Luckily, we get multiple bites of the apple when it comes to stuff like this. Excuse me. Ben Zeisloft writes, South Carolina lawmakers approved a bill banning abortion for women with misdemeanor penalties. While this bill falls short of the actual equal protection, the vote this morning approves that abolitionists are winning the argument and shifting the Overton window. So Ben Zeisloft is exactly right here. This is exactly what needs to happen because murder is wrong, morally wrong, regardless of how it's done, whether it's done on a ziggurat or whether it's done on a Planned Parenthood clinic or whether it's done in some back alley and it's somebody who's, like that mom who was murdered by the Haitian at the gas station. It's wrong. It's evil. And what does it say when Cain kills Abel? His blood cries out from the ground. But let me just take a side note and tell you how, because I agree with Ben Zeisloff, but I'm going to go a step further. This is one of the rare instances where we're winning on the language. This is a rare instance where we are winning on the language. Historically speaking, nobody is for slavery. And everybody, historically speaking, looks at the abolitionists who were saying we've got to get rid of the slave trade in America, or everybody looks at the abolitionists in England with William Wilberforce sacrificing his entire political career working on that one issue, and England actually got to end the slave trade peacefully without a war. America, it cost us, 300,000 Americans. Or 600,000, actually. 300,000 from the north, 300,000 from the south, give or take. So, and I know the Civil War wasn't about slavery, specifically like that. It wasn't all about slavery. I get that, but I'm not trying to have that argument here. I'm talking about the language, abolition. So the candidate who's been on the show many times in Arkansas, the candidate for Secretary of State, Brian Norris, who lost very, very, very narrowly by 900 votes, and I think that's in the courts now. But Brian Norris made a post on Facebook when he was running saying he did not get the endorsement of Arkansas Right to Life because he was an abolitionist. Meaning, here in Arkansas, the anti-abortion, the anti-abortion organization here in Arkansas, Arkansas Right to Life, doesn't want to have an equal protection bill. They don't want to make it criminal for women to murder their children, for doctors or for the women. And they don't know it yet, and maybe this is bad political strategy, but the fact that the Right to Life is using the term abolitionist and saying we are not abolitionists, and I got some clarity on that. They actually said that we're not going to support you, we're not going to give you the endorsement, and I don't know if it was public, but it was communicated to me, yeah, you're an abolitionist, we don't support abolitionists. They're actually telling this to candidate. I have another source from another candidate who almost didn't get the endorsement. So my point is, and this is happening, we're watching the pro-life movement become the pro-choice movement all across this country. And I'm just telling you right now, we're in a very rare situation here where these Christian red states are going to eventually win this argument, and they're going to win it because the other side are saying they're against abolition. It's only a matter of time. And this is a very rare, where rhetorically speaking, we are in a very good place. And the folks that want to actually end abortion were geniuses by drawing this word back into our vernacular, abolition, and abolishing abortion in that way and saying, I am an abolitionist. Abolitionist now means you are truly against abortion because you think it's murder. So I just wanted to make that slight observation about it because I think it's kind of the nitty-gritty of the politics, but words and symbols, they have meanings, and they drive the Overton window. They move the Overton window. Ben Zeisloff, a great follow if you are an abolitionist and you want to actually see this codified and you want babies to be equally protected like anybody else would be. He's a great follow for that. So just wanted to put that out there. In other news, really positive news out of the Department of Justice. We just spent the whole first hour, by the way, talking about how this administration has a ton of work to still do on the taxes. Even though there's record refunds and everything like that, we talked about how the psychological oppression of the Federal Reserve, the IRS, is got to go. But this is good news, okay? Enrique Tarrio, this was last night. I saw this breaking. because of Zach's motion and the efforts of many of us, Jeanine Pirro, this is great news. Thank you, Jeanine Pirro. Jeanine Pirro has moved to dismiss all charges in the Proud Boys sedition trial. They won't need a pardon anymore. Full rights restored and full military benefits and back pay will be processed. Our lives are now closer to being whole. This is my happiest day since the pardon that released us from the jaws of injustice. I want to thank Jeanine Pirro, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. He says, I also want to apologize for some of my harsh words previously. My passion is my brothers and my community, and I take them seriously when they have suffered so much. And you have proven to share that passion. And a huge thank you to President Donald J. Trump. Thank you so much to the Department of Justice for doing what's right and showing that justice is still alive in our country, MAGA. Boy, I love this. I love this story in light of all of the infighting that's been going on the last 30 days because of the Iran war. This is a win. This is a win that can be celebrated by everyone, the entire coalition that voted for President Donald Trump. Huge win. Joe Hanneman says breaking convictions of Stuart Rhodes and three other Oath Keepers for alleged J6 crimes will be vacated, and the original case is dismissed with prejudice under a DOJ motion before the U.S. Court of Appeals. Now, I also think that because these people did serve time, they served time and were pardoned, and now they're basically saying the case should have never been brought in the first place. I understand that this might mean that they're actually entitled. The government has to pay them like $60,000 a year for every year they were incarcerated. At least I read that somewhere. I thought I had that pulled up, so I could be wrong there. But this is a big deal. There's also going to be not just the back pay for the military benefits, but you're going to have, I'm told, restitution because of essentially wrongful imprisonment. These guys didn't get out of jail till they were pardoned. Enrique Tarrio was sentenced, I think, to 17 years. So the leftist media is freaking out because of this. And it's actually quite glorious to behold. So we're going to go to one of the worst offenders. National Public Radio. Remember when Elon Musk took NPR's X account and labeled them state-funded media, so they rage quit X? That was pretty good. So a guy by the name of Todd Drisbach, his headline for NPR: Trump administration moves to erase January 6th riot convictions for seditious conspiracy. And the first paragraph is the best because they can't help themselves. Quote, in the latest move to rewrite history. Sorry. It's funny, man. It's really funny. In the latest move to rewrite the history of the violent J6 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, the Department of Justice has filed papers seeking to vacate the seditious conspiracy convictions against members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, extremist groups, they say, who previously received commutations rather than full pardons from President Trump. So that was the big deal here. Let me amend my statements because I said that they got pardons. They didn't get pardons. They got commutations. A bunch of other J6ers got pardons, but they just got commutations. And so they, not getting their pardons in those cases, basically they didn't really have their lives back yet. Now they have their lives back. And it wouldn't have happened without Jeanine Pirro. It wouldn't have happened without Todd Blanche. I'm not a fan of Todd Blanche. I think he's a Democrat. He is a Democrat. I don't trust him. I don't think he should be the Attorney General. I don't think he should be the Deputy Attorney General. But you got to call balls and strikes. This is a strike. This is good. This is really good. And you got to wonder, what kind of relief do these people have? Now, there's still more work to be done. Not everybody, the issue's not over. There's other people as well still need help here. But this is good. So we can bask in this for a little while. But we do have to cover the rest of the news today. And this is where we get into that unfortunate. In a perfect world, there would be two narratives. Or sorry, in a perfect world, there would be one narrative. There would be one side of the story within the MAGA or America First, or within the Republican coalition. But unfortunately, with the J6 pipe bomber story, there is now two. And I am more convinced by Steve Baker's reporting than I am of the DOJ's. And by the way, the person who's in charge of charging Brian Cole, the black autistic kid, that they're now saying planted the pipe bomb, the prosecutor in charge of that is the same one who was responsible for abusing these J6ers. Same one. The J6ers who, just real quick here, what happened to some of these J6ers, Oath Keepers, Proud Boys? False and misleading testimony, political bias and selective prosecution, entrapment and government misconduct. Back in the day, Enrique Tarrio actually said that the only document that they had to convict him was one that the DOJ knew the FBI wrote, and they didn't. So this is the same lady who was responsible for all of this misconduct is now the same lady who's still employed by the DOJ, and she's now saying that it was Brian Cole Jr., not the Capitol Hill police officer Kirchhoff, that Steve Baker and Haberman think that it is. Hold on 1 second here. So, here it is right here. So Joe Hanneman reporting on this news today that the DOJ piles on 2 more pipe bomb charges against Brian Cole Jr. in a superseding indictment, one under federal code, the other under District of Columbia code. And let's go back here. Viva Frey says, add more charges, terrorism-related charges, seek enhancements, longer sentences in order. So he says this is all in order to coerce a guilty plea on lesser charges. Seems like they did this to other criminal defendants. Seems like they did this to other J6ers. Oh, yeah, and this superseding indictment was signed off by the same person who was integral in the J6 persecutions, what I was just telling you. The Gateway Pundit's coverage of this headline, alleged DNC pipe bomber Brian Cole hit with 2 additional charges in superseding indictment. So, look, Steve Baker is no longer with the Blaze. He was fired for the Blaze. We haven't really covered any of this. I haven't covered a lot of this because, I'm sorry. Were we not even on there? Sorry, I was full screen the whole time. This is so ridiculous, but I believe the Intel oligarchy are alive and well, and the same. All right, so you got to look. Okay, go back and look at the Russia collusion hoax, specifically the Mueller investigation. Mueller investigation was a cover-up. It really wasn't an investigation into Trump. They knew what they had done. They knew they had committed treason. They knew they had falsified all of this evidence. They knew they had lied to the FISA court. They knew all of this. They knew they made up a crime. They knew that Obama was the one that ordered the fake intelligence assessment. Now, we all know this now, but at the time, they were desperately trying to cover up what they had done, so they used the Mueller investigation to do it. So when I say that they're alive and well, the Intel oligarchy, I'm saying they still do not want to face any sort of justice, and they've rigged the system for so long, and J6 is a big deal. It was a big plot. It was a big attempted color revolution against the American people to squash populism and make sure Donald Trump could never run for president again. J6 was, there were plain clothed agents in the crowd. If it wasn't for Tucker Carlson, we wouldn't have seen the video when he was on Fox of them taking a guided tour around the Capitol, being let in locked doors by the security. We had already seen the photos, the videos from that day where they were removing the barricades and the police. We already knew it was an inside job, but it was confirmed. And then Mitch McConnell threw a fit that Fox News aired. Fox News allowed Tucker Carlson to air that, and many people believe that was one of the main reasons he was let go, because he was exposing the J6. He also was exposing Big Pharma too, but that's a whole other topic of conversation. So the J6, look, that I at this point, and I've reserved the right to change my mind, but I think Steve Baker is right here. The way they're reacting, they don't want to really come out and be exposed as to fully setting up the American people and entrapping all these people. You know, the pardons went out. Jeanine Pirro did a great thing. But, let's forget about exactly the specifics of how it happened, because let's be clear. If in fact it was the Capitol Hill police officer that planted these bombs, that were fake bombs, by the way, and now she's at the CIA, and now we have Brian Cole's defense team, that made public that this lady, Kirchhoff, failed a polygraph test about this, that she was a suspect, and took a polygraph test weeks before they arrested this guy. It makes Steve Baker's reporting look even more credible. It wasn't just some random crazy conspiracy theory. And by the way, the fact that we're being told it's a conspiracy theory is more evidence that we're right, because we know the track record. When we're told that we're the crazy ones, we just have to wait 6 months or so to figure it out. So I'm going to continue monitoring the story. I know this is another big contentious issue within the Republican coalition, and this is not something you even have to take a side on, I guess. I mean, you don't have to take a side on. But in terms of, this journalist, Steve Baker, he looks more right than the Department of Justice and Kash Patel do, as of right now. This reeks of the same garbage that we saw with J6ers. And the reason it reeks is because the same person that set the J6ers up is the same one who's running point on the prosecution of Brian Cole Jr. Many of us may be asking why she wasn't fired. Wonder why she wasn't fired when the Trump DOJ took over. Probably for this very reason. Probably for this very reason. Because this is J6. This is their big, you had the Democrats believing this is worse than 9/11. There's a reason why NPR says the DOJ, by vacating the sentences of the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, there's a reason why they say, they're trying to rewrite history. It's because so much of their worldview depends on this, and it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans too. And so this is an effort, in my opinion, to protect the intel oligarchy that has still not been brought to heel in this country. And they have not been made to suffer the consequences that they should, whether it's the Russia collusion hoax, whether it's the COVID censorship, or whether it's January 6th. And there's a lot of other stuff in between. Yeah, we could yada it, quite frankly. Real quick, I haven't really checked into the comments. Let's see here. What do we got here? Somebody's referencing my time. RL5 trucker Paul knows he spent enough time at the Capitol in Little Rock. Okay, so RL trucker, you are a Arkansan, I take it then. I don't know what this is in reference to, though, because I'm way far behind. But yes, I did cover politics at the Capitol in Little Rock for a long time. I was in Arkansas radio for 10 years, and I have a lot of stories. I have a lot of stories about my time there, and really saw a lot of how the sausage was made down there. From what I can tell, not a lot's changed. But that's the nature of politics, That's the nature of politics. RL5 trucker, Little Rock equals DC. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, yes, it definitely is the same type of stuff that goes on. When I've been to DC, you do feel like a spiritual weight on that city. And when you walk into the Capitol at Little Rock, I felt the similar situation there. It's not as bad. It's much easier to get good pieces of legislation that actually are good for the people and honor the Lord passed out of your state capitals, or at least in mine. It's much easier to do. But there's still things that go on that are not good, and there's still forces that you're battling there that want to basically call evil things good and good things evil. But, you look at these Christian red states that have passed bills protecting kids, banning transgender surgeries, making doctors liable, and you get local legislators going down to the floor that literally will quote the Bible and say, we've got to protect the kids because the Bible says so. You don't get that in D.C., and you should. But in D.C., you get people rolling their eyes, and you get people at all levels of government, as we talked about yesterday, we don't have people that have a fear of the Lord. And when you don't have that, then you're really allergic to Scripture, and you roll your eyes at it. But anyway, I appreciate somebody out there remembers my work there. But, speaking of D.C., and wicked things. Nick Sorter, WTF, 6 Republicans just joined Democrats to advance a bill barring Trump from deporting illegal Haitians. 219 to 209. This comes just days after a Haitian murdered an innocent mother with a hammer. The GOP has a massive rhino problem. These are the 6 senators, or 6 Republicans that have to go. Salazar, Bacon, Fitzpatrick, Lawler, Malitakis, and Jimenez. So, this is another betrayal. And, of course, we remember, this is them there. Do we have the video of the Haitian murdering? Thankfully, we don't, because it's absolutely brutal. But you see there, this is the Haitian man, a still frame of the Haitian man beating her 6 times with a hammer, a mother, outside of a gas station attendant, by the way. And it's outrageous that these people have such a hatred for us, and their votes make us less safe in so many instances. And this is a no-brainer, and yet the Republicans can't hold it together here. Because they disagree. I mean, they really do believe in this. They believe in demographic replacement, or they don't want to be. We don't want to be not nice. They don't want to admit that if you bring the third world to America, you get third world results. Here's Congressman Brandon Gill on this exact story, saying House Resolution 965 is a backdoor amnesty for hundreds of thousands of Haitians who came into our country illegally. In an abject disgrace and a shameful betrayal of everything Republicans ran on in 2024, all conservatives should vehemently reject it. Unfortunately, the bill was just discharged on the House floor with 219 votes. We will vote on the final passage of the bill tomorrow. Brandon Gill calling this nonsense out. In other news, California Democrats are trying to pass something called the Stop Nick Shirley Act, or at least that's what it's nicknamed. Nick Shirley, of course, is the popular YouTuber who exposed a lot of corruption in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with the Somali fraud in the famous Leering Center. But he also went to California and exposed a lot of fraud there as well as other people who are inspired by Nick Shirley exposing the hospice fraud. It's quite the moment when we realize that all of these programs, or so many of these programs, that are used to pull on our emotional heartstrings to get us to support them, whether it's early life care or end of life care, are all being used by these immigrants or H-1Bs and even Americans to essentially collect a massive taxpayer-funded salary, in some cases generational wealth that just allows them to stay at home and hang out with their families all day while all of us are working. He exposed it, and yet they're afraid that he's going to expose more in action, because the DOJ is going after these people. So he writes, Newsom is terrified that he's going to continue to be exposed. They're willing to impose a $10,000 fine or imprisonment if you go and seek to find out the truth about the location that could potentially be fraudulent inside your own neighborhood. It makes you wonder who their donors are. Who are their donors? Why would they create this bill to try and make it harder to expose fraud? So as a journalist, this is clearly anti-First Amendment. It's anti one of the 5 freedoms of the First Amendment, which is the freedom of press. They don't want Nick Shirley to do the work that, quite frankly, ABC News used to do. 2020, Barbara Walters and Hugh Downs and John Stossel. John Stossel used to do this. He used to actually go to places and catch people in criminal acts and catch people in the midst of fraud or gross moral failures. And now this is being criminalized because this whole system is a total joke. This whole system has under our noses. We are a lawless country, and we've got to do something about it. Vice President J.D. Vance is trying to. Headline from the New York Post, J.D. Vance suspends 447 hospices in Los Angeles as part of his anti-fraud crackdown. Now, suspending them and arresting them are two different things, but the fraud needs to stop. The anti-fraud task force led by Vice President J.D. Vance has suspended 447 hospices and 23 home health agencies suspected of fraud in L.A., with a total fraud estimate of more than $600 million. The number of suspensions is roughly 539% increase from the 70 reported by Fox News Digital at the beginning of April. Where there is fraud, the task force will find it. Check out the hook while my DJ revolves it. Sorry. I'm sorry. That was terrible. I'm ashamed of that. I may go back and edit that part out of this show. I really may. President Trump sits down with Maria Bartiromo to talk about China. This was interesting about how, they attack us, we attack them. When it comes to cyber attacks, President Trump's answer.
I wrote because I had heard that China is giving weapons to, you're seeing it all over the place, to Iran, that China's
Did he
giving
say he's
weapons.
giving them?
Yeah, and I wrote him a letter asking him not to do that. And he wrote me a letter saying that essentially he's not doing that.
Okay. Well, we just heard from the FBI recently that there was a major cyber attack attributed to China. What response is under consideration for that cyber attack?
We do it to them. They do it to us. We do it to them. Well,
when was the last time we did a cyber attack in China?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you that. But we do them. They do us. It's been like that for a long time.
So it's not going to be addressed?
I'll address things, but, it is what it is. Look, China's China. They're never easy, but we're doing great with China. I'm the toughest person in China anywhere in the world. I put on 100% tariff on Chinese cars. We don't have a Chinese car in the whole country.
It is true. The internet is the wild, wild west still in a lot of respects. I guess it's just a really powerful technology from a nation state standpoint, right? We know everything we do here is recorded and that sort of thing by our own government, which is going to lead us into the FISA situation, which is ridiculous. China does it to us, we do it to them. I just thought that was a funny clip. The cyber situation is and especially with this AI arms race that we're in the middle of. You never know. We need to brace for that. This is actually a good segue, though, into this story, which we covered briefly yesterday, but we ran out of time. And there's fallout from this. There's people that disagree with President Trump on this. As somebody who believes in the Fourth Amendment, I don't like the FISA courts. I don't like the abuse that's gone on. President Trump saying, though, that he will work to continue a clean FISA renewal. This is the very system that framed him for treason.
In future elections, like in the upcoming.
We'll talk about it, pros and cons. Look, they used it to try and put me in prison, right? So I can't be thrilled with it. They use that very strongly, very illegally. The Democrats are thugs, and I don't want to say that. It would be nice to everyone get along, but it's a different country than it was years ago. It was very dangerous the way they used it, and they weaponized government. They used that to weaponize government. So I'm not thrilled, but I'll also go along with two groups of people, the military, and I think the military likes it, right? And I'll go along with the senators. I'm fine.
So he says it's a different country now than it is then. And, I mean, it certainly is in terms of we have a new administration. But, again, I just told you that the intel oligarchy, in my opinion, is still alive and well. And so, yeah, this is disappointing. And the reason it's disappointing is because I want my Fourth Amendment. And it's been taken from us in the name of the Patriot Act or national security or whatever. And it was clearly abused. The Liberty Daily ran this headline. Trump says it's worth risking rights and privileges as a citizen to keep deep state surveillance tool online despite previously demanding it be dismantled. I mean, we do remember when President Trump said, this was back April 10th of 2024, kill FISA. It was illegally used against me and many others. They spied on my campaign. And it would be one thing to say, okay, well, the government is different now than it was then. And that is true, at least on paper. But has anybody been arrested because of this? Have the FISA court judges been arrested if they did something wrong, or the FBI or the CIA or the NSA or anybody who intentionally lied to the FISA court or the FISA judges? Has that done? I mean, and that hasn't been done. Section 702 of FISA allows intelligence agencies to collect, share, and appropriately share any foreign intelligence collection regarding potential national security threats, according to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. While the section does not allow agencies to survey citizens or surveil citizens in the United States and only applies to those outside of the country, they can monitor any emails or calls between a party and anyone within the country. For this reason, Section 702 requires specific procedures to minimize the acquisition, retention, and sharing of any information concerning United States persons. Because of the ambiguity, this could lead to bulk data collection of communication between Americans and foreigners overseas, even if someone is not suspected of any wrongdoing, according to the Brennan Center for Justice. Essentially, any communication under this section could be done without a warrant. And so that is the problem. It's a big problem. I mean, it's to the point where it's like, okay, well, if you have any interaction with anybody outside the borders, whether it's nefarious or not, it's an international communication. Oh, guess what? We can now spy on you. And the fact is, they're already doing it. Again, it was in 2013 that we found out about the Utah data center. 2012, 2013, Edward Snowden, the Utah data center, monitoring every keystroke we make. They record it all. That particular program is called X Keyscore. You can go look it up. All of it's already happening. Is it admissible in court? Well, with the Fourth Amendment, no, it's not. Well, this is a way to get it admissible in court. And I will say this, folks, barring a miracle, it's never going to go away. If the President of the United States can be framed for treason using this technology, and now he has the authority to get rid of it and chooses not to, the people don't have a chance on this issue. It may be fine for Trump now, but what about the next political candidate? What about the next political candidate who's more to the right than Trump, who's even further to the right than Trump, that the people support? FISA 702. So, it's just a little bit, I don't know, it's mildly frustrating. Here's a few takes from around the internet. Here is, well, R.Ed McIntyre. Why are we bragging about this? Can we pass the SAVE Act and stop the Democrats from stealing elections? Best I can do is pass an extension of a domestic spying act for the Dems to use on you after they steal the election. Here's Brianna Morello. She's upset, too. She says the President of the United States has admitted that FISA violates our constitutional rights, yet he claims he's willing to risk giving up my rights and privileges as a citizen for our great military and country. He never bothered to ask the rest of us. That was in a Truth Social post that he said that. She says, I'm not willing to surrender my rights just to prop up the corrupt federal government. We've gone from fighting to dismantle the deep state to now feeding and empowering it. My views on this issue have been consistent, but it's unfortunate that that's not the case for everyone. So I think this is a reason to take. If you believe in the Bill of Rights, which only the middle class in America does, in the entire world, it's only the middle class that believes in the Bill of Rights, privacy. Please don't come at me, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, then you have nothing to worry about. Well, the definition of what wrong is can change, right? Barbecuing on the 4th of July and shooting fireworks could, get you a 702 FISA. Who knows? In the future, with the Biden administration, basically, if you were white, that's basically what it was. If you were white, if you celebrated the 4th of July and you like to, grill meat on an open fire, congratulations, you may be a white supremacist domestic terrorist. Something to think about. So, interesting thing happened with Benny Johnson and his show. Benny Johnson talked to Lauren Boebert. And Lauren Boebert says that she wants Anthony Weiner's laptop and brings up the Frazzle Drip conspiracy theory.
I actually was working on getting the Anthony Weiner laptop because I want to see the files that are on this. And while we still had Attorney General Pam Bondi, she had sent me over to the FBI. And there is no active search warrant on that computer. And so they are saying that I am unable to view it without a new search warrant. And there has to be new information. I think these Epstein files give us new information to look into the Anthony Weiner laptop. Yeah. I absolutely want to know what was on there, what was the secret folder that was titled Life Insurance, that had frazzle.rip, where people get the Frazzle Drip story from. I want to see this video. If it's totally fake, if it's not there, I'll come out and say it. I want to see what people are talking about. These things don't just originate out of nowhere. So if it means issuing a subpoena from the Oversight Committee to get my hands on this laptop, then that's what I will do. If there's anything linking the Anthony Weiner laptop to the Epstein files, I will use that to get another search warrant. But I'm getting my hands on this laptop and looking to see what was in it. It's been said that FBI agents who went in and viewed this laptop, many of them are not alive anymore. And so, what is it with this laptop? Apparently, it's been said that many have committed suicide, that it was so disturbing. But also, a lot of people around Hillary Clinton and her cohorts seem to commit suicide, oddly.
Yeah, like what, it was a couple of years ago, some guy hung himself with an extension cord and then from a tree and then shot himself in the chest with a shotgun. Obviously, being from Arkansas, these stories they hit a little closer to home. The Anthony Weiner laptop is a story, and it is kind of the conspiracy theory of conspiracy theories when it comes to that Frazzle Drip conspiracy. Allegedly, there's some video of Hillary Clinton what they say on the interwebs is that it's a video of her. It's basically a snuff film, but like a really gross, like that show, like cutting up, murdering somebody, cutting the face off. I think that's the conspiracy theory that a sitting member of Congress just referenced on Biddy Johnson's show. Just so we're clear what she's talking about. That's what she's talking about here. That she wants to see the Anthony Weiner laptop so that she can verify if that folder even exists and what is it really. That would be the conspiracy theory of conspiracy theories coming true. In terms, what I just said earlier, like, well, wait 6 months and you'll be proven true. This one's been around for, several years at this point, but never confirmed. But with the Epstein files, she is right. When you go look at the Epstein files and you have these allegations of cannibalism on yachts or grape soda or pizza or, hey, don't forget to bring the cheese holders. Make sure you bring the cheese holders. We gotta make sure we get those. And speaking of that, here is J.D. Vance last night at a Turning Point event, gets asked about Epstein, and he brings up, Vice President J.D. Vance brings up Pizzagate.
I'm called the files a hoax. The acting attorney general said Epstein shouldn't be a part of anything at the DOJ. If there are compromised government officials in those files, how can the public trust that this administration will hold anyone accountable when its own Justice Department is actively blocking the investigation? Given that, can you clearly articulate your stance on whether federal entities should have a formal investigation? Thank you.
Yeah. So first of all, you said the Associate Attorney General or something. I haven't seen that quote, but here's my view on the Epstein matter. Number one, the guy was clearly a scumbag, okay? Number two, he clearly had extraordinary connections both with intelligence services, both inside the United States and outside the United States, and also with a lot of very wealthy and powerful people, okay? Number three, I have been a firm advocate.
Whoa. Let's stop right there.
Continue to be a firm advocate, and also with a lot of United States and outside the extraordinary connections both with intelligence services, both inside the United States.
Okay, so, I mean, we've been assured, by Todd Blanche that the intelligence component of this is just not true. We've been assured. I'm just pointing that out. Vice President Vance says it's clear that he was associating with intelligence.
States and outside the United States, and also with a lot of very wealthy and powerful people, okay? Number three, I have been a firm advocate and will continue to be a firm advocate of where we have something, and I'm probably more obsessed with this than most officials, okay? Probably more obsessed with this than most people even in this room, is when you see somebody who says something in an email that suggests, there's one email I read, and it's been a little while ago, but it was talking about, one person sent an email to Jeffrey Epstein saying, oh, there were some really nice, pizzas and grape sodas or something like that. And I remember it sounded like the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, but here it was in an email from a guy. And my reaction to that was, we should absolutely investigate that person, okay? And, you remind me, I'm going to follow up on that to see whether we've investigated that person, because we should. We absolutely should. When you see evidence of sexual assault, sexual misconduct, regardless of whether you're powerful or not, in fact, you should probably investigate.
I'm glad this conversation has reminded the vice president to do this. Let's hope that he does. Let's hope that he investigates the Pizzagate, the obvious coded language that's in the files. So let's hope that this conversation that reminded him to do that actually comes to fruition. It should have already happened. If you or it's just a fact. If you and I were the vice president of the United States and we saw that there was stuff in there that was validating Pizzagate, the listener, you would have already done something. because we're talking about kids. We're talking about children. I think most people would have. Now, he's a busy guy, and, I get it, but come on.
Get it more if you're a powerful person, right? I don't want powerful people, being involved in this disgusting behavior. But I have to defend the president on this because when he said that...
To be clear, I really like J.D. Vance. Just trying to call balls and strikes.
It was a hoax. What he was talking about was this democratic idea that he's connected to Epstein. If you look at those emails, it's like, they were in the same, everybody in Palm Beach knew everybody, okay? Like the president has said he knew Jeffrey Epstein and he was a scumbag.
All right, that's the clip that was making that was viral. Because it's on. I've got a couple of those same clips, which is this one's 56 seconds, but you don't get any more of that. So, Vice President Vance saying, "Look, we need to investigate Pizzagate." Explaining, President Trump when he called it a hoax. Look, I mean, we covered this on the show when President Trump called it a hoax, and we tried to parse the words, say, well, I mean, if they're trying to say he's involved, that's why it's a hoax. But then, and so we had that. But then we had then you had the other statements of, or why are we still talking about Epstein and everything else? And again, statements like that, as well as the way Pam Bondi handled it, have got young people at these turning point events. That's what they care about. And I've been telling you guys, the people that are 40, my age and younger, they are very upset with, I think, actual gaslighting in some instances, for sure, and certainly perceived gaslighting. So, but it is good. It's good that the vice president, you've got Lauren Boebert and the vice president saying, hey, look, these conspiracy theories need to be looked at. So we can take that as a positive today on the show. Now, I mentioned Lauren Boebert earlier. Hang on real quick. Yeah, so we already talked about it. So Lauren Boebert mentions the frazzle drip on Benny Johnson. And then I get this video of Dave Chappelle mad at Lauren Boebert for something that happened in 2024.
Well, the presidency is the presidency. If you vote for the person or not, that's your president. This is an authority figure. This is the top law enforcement agent. He's the top, he's the executor of all of America's affairs. And I just have to move my crowd. You can opt out of my crowd. But you shouldn't have to leave America because the president's making the block too hot for you. So and I did resent that the Republican Party ran on transgender jokes. I felt like they were doing a weaponized version of what I was doing. I didn't. It's not what I was doing. I'll give you an example. Yeah. This is before I learned the phrase "I respectfully decline," and I was on Capitol Hill, and everybody ran up to take pictures with me from every congressional office. And I just take pictures with whoever asked. I didn't ask how they vote or what their voting record is. And everyone at first was like CBC people. And then here comes Lauren Boebert. And she said, can I get a picture? And I'd already taken 40 pictures. I didn't want to say no in front of everybody. But I didn't know the phrase, I respectfully decline. So I just took the picture. And then she posted a picture before I could even get from there to the show and says something to the effect of, just two people that knew that it's just two genders. She instantly weaponized it or politicized it. So I got to the arena and I lit her ass up for doing that. And she should never do that, a person like me.
Now she knows what's up.
Yeah, you do whatever the fuck you're doing. Excuse my language. You do whatever it is you do, but don't get me out of the splash zone.
This is odd to me because I cannot imagine a world. I cannot imagine a world where Dave Chappelle blasted the trans enclave in this country with several Netflix specials, within several Netflix specials, and him be like, well, I'm just telling jokes, and not pointing out that this, and I know he would say things like, I'm not judging, but I'm confused because the trans people, the L's, the G's, the B's, and the T's. It's weird to me to think of a world where Dave Chappelle wrote those jokes not coming from a place of this country is insane, is getting insane, and the trans stuff is too far and it's got to stop. And then being like, but I've got to say, I've got to say in order to kind of keep my career, I've got to say, or the too much backlash, because there was a lot of backlash, but I've got to say, hey, I'm just asking questions, or these are just jokes, chill out, or, don't tell me who I can joke about or who I can. And he would also say, but I respect trans people. If you want to do that, that's fine. But it is kind of weird. He had these jokes. He had these jokes based on observations, though, that you couldn't say. Jokes like every person in this arena, every person in this room was born from a woman. And I think he said came out from in between the legs of a woman. Every person in this room that happened to. And he was saying these things, and it was driving the left nuts. The reaction to it validated all of us. I know Dave Chappelle is more of a leftist, but the fact that he was a leftist and he came out with these Netflix specials, I watched them, and I was laughing hysterically, and I also couldn't believe it was happening because we were in the midst of crazy world where we were being told all this stuff was normal and that the LGBTQ, RSTLNE, would you like to buy a vowel community were the next, we're imitating the plight and the pattern of black people in the 1960s, or from slavery to the 1960s, and how ludicrous it was. It's very difficult for me to take this Dave Chappelle seriously, though, on it, and he may be, but it's very difficult for me to sit down and think that he didn't write those jokes because he thought the trans community, the trans enclave, were certifiably insane, and then all of the qualifiers were just him having to do that. It's difficult for me to wrap my head around that. Now he's saying that the right weaponized his trans jokes. I don't know what you would. I don't know what you would think would happen, because maybe just Dave Chappelle does not understand how his jokes were like. His jokes were like an oasis in a desert. His jokes were like we are dying of thirst for someone to admit that the left in this country had gone absolutely crazy, and Dave Chappelle was one of those people. And now he says, no, you guys weaponized my jokes. The Republicans weaponized it. I don't know, man. You were saying funny stuff. Your latest Netflix special, I didn't even finish it because I didn't think it was funny. You were just saying basic things like, men are men and women are women, on the basis of everybody's got to come through a woman to be born, right? I mean, you even actually called out the pro-abortion people in your audience in one special by saying, if you can kill it, I should have the right to not pay for it and not get stuck with child support. And some of them were more outraged at that statement than they were that, you basically brought up the fact of how, and you even said, if you can kill it, which is something the left denies. So the whole thing, and maybe he was in that headspace, but if that's true, it just goes to show you the totally different headspaces liberals and or progressives or liberals and conservatives are in. Because I don't see how you write those jokes without writing them from a place of this trans stuff is insane. And he's now trying to say, I didn't write them from that place, and the right weaponized it. I don't know. I'm sure it would never happen, but I'm sure if we ever had a conversation, maybe it would come. Maybe he would clarify, or we would come to a better understanding. I don't know, but I'm also going to remark about this. There's a spectacle going on now, and you need to be made aware of it. Can you see? So this is an NPR interview, and I know it's National Public Radio, but most of the time, or PBS, in the past, there wouldn't be a microphone labeled NPR. I'm paying attention to detail here, and I want you to pay attention to detail too. Okay? The lapel, I used to have one. The lapel mic is being killed by the podcast mic. The lapel mic, no one ever thought that these radio microphones would make such a big comeback because radio is dead. But they have. Because of the internet, because of cheap cameras and things like that, like they have. They made a big comeback. And the podcast scene, these people think you are stupid. They now believe, they have somehow convinced themselves that the reason podcasts are so successful is because of this cool setup. Not because of the content, not because we're getting information that no one else wants to know. No, the mainstream media now believes that they have lost credibility because they don't have cool podcast sets. And it's not just NPR doing this, because years ago he would have had a lapel mic on. If there had been a camera involved, he would have had a lapel mic on, and it would have been the end of it. But now they're going to microphones with their emblems on them. Sean Hannity is doing the same thing. Anderson Cooper is doing the same thing. They're now building for themselves podcast sets. They look ridiculous. It's patently obvious that they're trying to become relevant by creating podcast studios because the normal format of green screen or studio with a lapel and, teleprompter and everything else like that, normal format is now being considered not credible because people don't trust you. You see Anderson Cooper, you see Sean Hannity. That format no longer is trusted, and they're looking at the podcasters who don't have these $100,000 cameras, who don't have these amazing sound systems, and they're just doing what they can. And yeah, they try to make it look cool, or they try to have aesthetics. Like mine is actually really, really subpar compared to everybody else's, but we do what we can here at the Paul Harrell program. But they're now trying to put on the mask of podcasts to try to regain their credibility, and they think that you will buy it. These people are frauds. I'm just putting that out there. Like, it is so hilarious to me that this is where they are. We are at a place where they've lost so much credibility that they're now. If you would have told people this years ago, they wouldn't have believed it. That they are now so desperate for credibility that they're taking mainstream Fox News and CNN personalities and putting them in and trying to make it look like it's less technical by, well, we need to have a microphone. We don't need to have our lapels anymore. We need to get a microphone because the microphone, everybody loves the microphone. It's so stupid, man. It's so stupid and patently obvious that they're not going to get their credibility back, even though they're now trying to put on yet another mask so that they can continue to brainwash everybody. That's all the time that we have for this edition of the Paul Harrell program. We will see you tomorrow here on LFA TV. Make sure you like and subscribe to LFA TV on Rumble. And if you're watching on the Paul Harrell program YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, click the little bell to receive notifications. Want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Red Vive Health, New Horizon Real Estate, Gateway Sight and Sound, 7 Weeks Coffee, and Share It Chiropractic. God bless and have a great night. We're going to hand it off to Secret America.